All right, yeah, welcome to the Genesis episode of Looks Rare. I'm Zink. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm joined here with Scaly, Shook, Vandalay.
Hey, guys.
Pep, and then maybe later we'll see Plum and Debussy. So, welcome to the show, and how's everyone doing?
Good. I'm excited to do this. We've been talking about it for a while, so.
We've been kind of experiencing this NFT wave this past year, pretty much together. We kind of all got together around in the spring at some point, and it's just been, this crazy wild ride. And, we decided, being the smart guys we are, to launch a podcast in the depths of the NFT bear market, hopefully not multi-year. But, I think there's still lots going on. There's still lots of opportunities out there. And so this is going to be a good place to sit down and think about, what's coming up, what's going on. And
I don't know. I kind of think it's been a little bit of a crazy week in NFT land. I don't know. I know you guys didn't necessarily want to talk about it, but we have to at least talk about the elephant in the room, which is the death of punks and, apes and punks and all the punk FUD and 4156 and all that stuff.
Punks have been the kind of primary or the main profile pic avatar. We have seen a floor of up to at least 140 at one point. Apes of the newcomers, seen steady growth, and almost really nothing really has kind of gotten their way, and they just continue to grow and grow and grow. Now we're starting to see them come up against each other one-on-one, very different ideas about the future. And, I think this is really starting to be kind of one of those culture clashes within the NFT space. What way are we going next, right? Are we going one in which there's lots of arguments about the correct kind of rights that should be attached to NFTs, CCO versus full copyright versus some sort of mix in between?
It kind of seems like tribalism, which it is, but hearing you talk about it in that context, there's actually a lot more to it than just, my $200,000 avatar is better than your $300,000 avatar. And, I'd be curious to hear different perspectives on it, but this whole apes flipping punks thing, kind of started out as hopium, and now it's actually looking much more possible. And I bet some guy on Twitter, I don't remember who it was, 2ETH, that it wouldn't happen because he was challenging anyone who would accept his bet. So I figured I had to. But I don't actually care about the skin in the game, honestly. Like, it's more about, and that's not really what I want to talk about. I'd like to talk about like what are the real issues here. And I think you touched on it. The rights issue is probably the biggest one that's come up. But as I've looked into it more, it's kind of ironic because apes don't even really they have commercial rights, but they don't have, they're not public domain the way, for example, cryptodes are, or I guess nouns are. And then you have Cryptopunks, which Larva Labs was kind of silent on. They initially sort of softly endorsed the Nifty license and then sort of backpedaled on that. They didn't really back it up and kind of went silent. And then there was that thing about that agency buying, I guess, the rights, or I didn't quite understand that, some deal with an agency, which made it clearly look like they're never going to be public domain or even maybe Nifty license anymore. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. There's almost like two categories, right? There's really no rights. Like if you buy a Picasso, you own the Picasso, but you have no rights over his work or even the work you own. You can't commercialize it. That's sort of how punks are. And then you have apes, which have this limited thing where you own the rights to your ape, but you still can't use like the Ape Yacht Club, name and produce merchandise without their authority, or you can't make like a movie about the Bored Apes without their, approval. Yeah. And then you have things like nouns and toads, which you can do whatever the fuck you want with them. You can make a giant sex scene that's super offensive to everyone on the planet, and technically they can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the breakdown. There has been some work. I think this is one area, I think, where it's just, there's not been a lot of communication in most projects between the creators and the people buying, and then along with that, a lot of misunderstandings. So even in the case of a Nifty license that many projects end up going with, there's still limits on the amount of commercialization of your NFT. A lot of times it's $100,000. And I think it also like opens up a lot of questions about, what is the purpose of NFTs. I think people in their heads have this idea that they are buying something that they can then turn into their own development of their own intellectual property, right? And I think that's a really new thing in general. Like, I've listened to David Horvath talk about dealing with publishers and manufacturers and the whole Hollywood system, who owns what and all the partnerships that go into that and all the legal stuff that happens behind the scenes. It's not always very clear on the face of it who owns any of the rights. And so, maybe I think, this is this is an old question about creators' rights, who's allowed to profit off people's work. And now it's kind of up in the open now because NFTs are just so public. And so I think people thought that we were buying something for explicitly that reason. Like you just had the Jenkins writer's room. The guy clearly bought his ape with the intention of turning it into some sort of property. Yeah. I think it's really just opening up, all the things I think that people knew, people who dealt with this sort of stuff in the past with lawyers and with large corporations. And I think this is stuff that's all well known. The difficulty of intellectual property and making sure the right people get the right royalties and all these sorts of things. And I think it's just getting broken way out in the open because of NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, how necessary do you guys find communication from the devs, for instance? Like, do you find a lack of communication from Larva Labs disenchanting?
I mean, when I first joined Punks, they might come in the Discord and say, "Hey, we've watched in the background and heard that you might want these extra features," and then they would change the website. Like, for example, they added you could search for 2 trade, 1 trade, 7 trade, where that was a feature they added because they clearly saw that we wanted it. So they would sort of listen in the background and adapt in that way. But when we talked about rights, they pretty much never jumped in and answered it or even discussed it with us. And there was one, I have a screenshot somewhere of a Discord comment that one of them made basically saying that they were going to adopt the Nifty license. But then they clearly didn't come out again and agree that that's kind of what they're going to do. And then more recently, it's like they've been completely silent. And it's a little frustrating, honestly. I mean, I don't think it's super important that you have to have some... I mean, the thing with Punks, what I tweeted the other day was that they're a finished project. I mean, there's really nothing else to do with them. They were never meant to do anything else. So in my mind, that's good because you're not stuck with this endless... people always wanting more, right? Where does it stop? Your roadmap, you drop this, you have an airdrop of that, then you need to have this. You have to keep having fuel to this fire to pump this tokenomics or whatever the hell you want to call it. Whereas Punks are just, they are what they are and they're done. But
yeah. I mean, I have no Punks. I mean, so obviously someone with deep 8 figures like 4156, his opinion should take merit over mine, but I do find the lack of involvement from the devs, like you said, right? This is the finished project. This is what it is. I find that to be a punk, in the spirit of a punk sort of thing, right? As an observer. But I mean, again, I don't have a deep 8 figures like a 4156 invested into the project. So maybe his frustration is more warranted than my perspective.
I also don't think they're as flexible. I mean, they can't. It was created so long ago. I mean, apes were created, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were created all along to be different in that way, right? It wasn't later they changed it. I'm pretty sure right when it was minted, they said, look, you can do whatever you want within reason with your ape, and we want you to own this. We're kind of in response to Punks. Yes, we're copying Punks in the sense that we are doing a 10,000 PFP project with trait variabilities and rarities. But we're also going to make it better, and this is how we're going to make it better, And so that's what was honestly lost on me when it came out. I just saw that people were following in, and so I bought some. But I didn't like the art that much, and then I didn't understand those other nuances at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's just this whole communications question. People in their heads have decided what things should be, and without really taking a good look at what things ought to be or what things are. If even comparing apes and Punks, the 2 completely different projects. It's even if you were to add toads on that, so you have the 3 kind of main versions. They're all 3 different types of projects, right? the Nouns and Toads are doing something very completely different than the Punks, which are doing something completely different than the Apes. And I think that it should be fine. I think there's just the anger is that people wanted to do one thing with another project that maybe it wasn't intended for. And so I can totally understand someone like 4156, bailing because, he obviously had an idea for what he wanted to do with his punk identity. He made it his entire identity online, and obviously he's not going to be able to do those things. And so, that doesn't really make so much sense for him to kind of stick around. So, I think though the narratives are just too strong. I don't think most punk owners are there to be able to create a brand outside of their punk, and I don't think that's what drives punk valuation.
Yeah, I don't think it's what drives valuation either. But I agree that if I was 4156, I totally get why he would be frustrated because he's been there since the beginning, has a lot of valuable punks, has done a lot for the project in his own way, and then for them to not even be in contact with them, I don't really understand that part of it. That seems kind of weird. But the recent price action is kind of curious to me because the floor has dropped almost in half. Not quite, or maybe it is. It's dropped pretty much straight in half.
Yeah, in half.
And if you compare that to Apes, which isn't necessarily the most important comparison, but like Apes have done really well. So they've held their floor, if not gone up, and then
they've held their floor. Yeah.
So compared to Punks, they've basically 2x'd in the last month or something. So if you're going to say the floor of Punks has fallen by 50%, does that mean that 50% of the value of them was erased because we no longer we now know that we can't use them commercially? Like, no, I don't think so. I mean, first of all, anyone in the project for a while knew that was probably never going to happen. So for you to assume that would be a pretty false assumption. So I don't really know how much of the price action of Punks is related to this, 3-year, even though this has been known for 3 years, all of a sudden everyone's having this epiphany that you can't have commercial rights with your punks. It's like, what do you mean? Like we were talking about this 2 years ago, like we've always known this. So I don't think that's really why the price is falling. But, and then curiously, after 4156 liquidated tons of really good punks, it actually didn't really change the floor, right? I mean, I don't think it really went down any further. It certainly didn't help it go up, but it sort of absorbed that pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I think these discussions of rights have been kind of on the forefront of punk discussions, as long as I've been in NFTs. The whole Punks comics kind of confronted these issues. People have been talking about this ever since Apes gave the rights directly to their users or their collectors. And so I can't imagine this last few weeks is the
Punks comic thing. The Punks comic thing was interesting, right? I had forgotten about that until I found an old tweet about it. And then I remembered that the initial idea was Beanie owned, I think it was 8 apes or however many he owned. And his idea was to make this comic book number 2 all about apes and call it basically, Bored Ape comic or whatever. And then they basically told him, you can't do that. Even if you own the apes and make it just about them, you still can't take the whole idea and make a comic book out of it. That's not what we're allowing you to do. And then I remember there was some backlash, and then that kind of got dusted over, and then people forgot about it. And then it's funny that now with all this discussion about, the initial implication is that, apes are the full rights thing and punks are no rights. But like I said earlier, that's not actually the case. I mean, apes are kind of in this middle ground, and that even makes it more complicated in some ways. So Beanie's solution to the comic was, I'm going to totally change how they look. It's inspired by these apes, of course, but there's going to be no branding of Bored Ape anywhere in it. And it's basically, it has nothing to do with Bored Apes,
I think the funny thing, like these are discussions that just don't really happen during like a full bull market, right? Like people are pretty enjoying themselves. Everything's going up. And these are the only things I think that come up when people start getting fatigued, right? And I kind of feel like we talked about this before too. Like, I think there is that general sense of fatigue happening in the NFT space. I don't know if there's the case of users not growing, if it's a case of just seeing the same people every day on Twitter. But I don't know how you guys feel, but like I definitely starting to get a little bit of that fatigue in terms of meme culture and the same sorts of comments and the same sorts of discussions kind of rehashing themselves. Like, I don't even know if there's that many projects I'm that interested in on the horizon either, right? And so I don't know how you guys feel about that in terms of just your overall fatigue.
Yeah, there's definitely fatigue because I think we've discussed this as well. And GM is no longer the same GM that we used to use.
I think there's also, PFP fatigue happened to me like 5 months ago or something. And then it like wouldn't die, and then I kind of came around to it again and was like, well, never mind. I'm gonna just embrace it. And then I thought there were some cooler ones that came out, but every day there's 4 coming out. Intergalactic Space Monkey Club and Goat Club, and
we had these periods throughout the year, I guess, of different fads, cycles, whatever you want to call them, and the saturation happened so fast, whether it was PFPs or whether it was loot derivatives or whatever it is. And I think the same applies right now in the broader crypto market with these Ohm forks, these Olympus forks. Every network's got a dozen of those, and I think the fatigue is setting in everywhere. That jadedness and that it's almost apathy towards stuff across the whole market, not just NFTs. I think everyone we've had a real long year of some real highs and some real extreme sort of fear at times as well. And maybe that's it. Maybe we're just all burned out.
Yeah, you see it with the recent art block drop. Right?
Yeah, totally.
You have Matt Cain, who's an OG artist, and they ended up minting at 0.25, which is wild.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, I think I didn't even pay attention to it because I assumed I wasn't going to be able to afford to mint. And then if I'd have known how much general broader apathy there would have been towards it, I'd have jumped on and minted a bunch. But
that's an interesting example because that's the first 10x from mint. Because check the floor, Poppy, but I think it's 3 or 2.5 or 3, and if they minted at 0.25, the floor has 10x in 1 or 2 days. When's the last time that happened? When's the last time that happened on an art block project?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe the Dutch auction format isn't really working, at least from a collector's point of view.
That's a good point. Bring on the gas wars. It's funny because the Braindrops guys, they decided to just do a old school gas war mint. And I don't know. I don't think it went badly. It wasn't as hyped as maybe a big art blocks curated drop would be, but I don't know, it was pretty hyped, and I was still able to mint. I paid a lot of gas, but I was still able to mint pretty easily, just jacking the gas up. And then the floor immediately like quadrupled on the stuff I got, and it has kind of stayed around there. And so, price action isn't everything, but I'm just saying it's nice to be able to get in there for cheap. You put a little effort in, you pay a little extra gas, you got to be ready, right? You got to do it right away. And then you get a couple pieces and then you chill. You don't have to like worry about buying on secondary or, doing all this other stuff.
With the gazers, they were, you could still buy them for 0.5 Ethereum or 0.5 Ether, sorry, like an hour or two after mint. And by the time I logged on, the floor had got bought up.
One of the best times to buy anything, right? Like immediately post mint where people are dumping what they don't know, what they have, right? It's just always.
Yep.
There's a red and black Fidenza, I think that went for like 0.18, like literally mint cost on secondary.
My theory on, not to really kind of independent of the art, well, I guess not independent. The project's obviously successful. Everyone really likes it. And Matt's a great artist. But it just seems like the price, based on just the price action alone, I find it really hard to believe that this almost 4 ETH floor is sustainable in the next week. Like I would expect it to go down at least to 2. So for example, if I want to buy one, I'm going to wait, but I could be totally wrong. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's really tough because I think it has, I haven't really looked in, but I think it has, it's got a similar sort of collector base as some of the earlier art blocks that are so concentrated in a few wallets that I don't think are of any interest in selling. So like, you could be right, but I think this might hold up a little better because I think you have people that are big collectors were able to get a lot for very cheap, and like I don't know if they have the same pressures to sell as people that maybe bought in panic bought in at 3 or 4 when the mint was that high, the DA was that high, and then that's a lot of money. That's a good percentage of their stack, right? And so then they worry if it goes down, so they dump.
Yeah,
I don't know. I wonder. I feel like there's going to be a little different dynamics here because there's some big names bought a lot.
I think that's a really good point. I think that's a really
Token A was bought a lot.
You talk about something that's got a real small supply anyway, and then people with steel hands that have got a chunk of that small supply themselves. Yeah,
but you're not helping my cause of wanting. I'm
in the same boat.
We see what you're doing now.
I had my finger on the buy button at 0.7, but I was at work and I was distracted. MetaMask Mobile is such crap. I'm like, I'll just get one when I get home. And then I got home and the floor was 2.
Yeah, you're like, it has to come down.
Yeah, no, I'm like, it'll come down. It's going to keep coming down. It's fine. It's fine.
I think another part of the fatigue thing is I feel like everyone's getting ready for the eventual whatever, like, in terms of like metaverse gaming or, potentially better displays or some new people coming in, entering the space with a lot of big pockets. And so there's a lot of that waiting feeling right now. Like, I don't know how much of you own like any sort of metaverse land that you can't do anything with, or metaverse characters that you can't really do anything with, but just kind of waiting for that next step. I don't know how that's making you guys feel.
Well, speaking of metaverse, I have a Cryptopunks plot that I got like 8 or 9 months ago. And I got it honestly just to play around, like not to sort of as an investment, but more just because I wanted to have one and like see what it was all about. And you can actually build without a plot for free in the spaces, but I figured I would just buy one and try it on there. And then it was a little cumbersome for me. And like I did build some stuff, but it didn't look that good. And I didn't actually love how the art looked in it. Like some of the displays are really low resolution and pretty janky in general, so I just didn't really like it. And then hadn't really messed around with it until literally today, got on there and was like, I'll check it out again. And I went into my account, tried to rename my name from Anonymous to Scaly Nelson. It wouldn't let me. Tried to add my wearables. I couldn't.
Oh, that's a horrible experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is not ready for even close to ready for normal people to use.
We're enthusiastic users, and I found the wearables thing real difficult.
Not there yet, and there's still nothing to display. There's nothing that I like to display my NFTs on yet, which is so funny that we're like spending so much time and effort and money on these things, and where do you even look at it? OpenSea doesn't work half the time. Speaking of, maybe we should talk about the OpenSea IPO. What do you guys think about that?
It seems early, but I don't know all the details. I guess they'll have a filing, right? So we can take a look at it eventually. But
what do you think about the death of our hope for a coin?
Yeah,
I think Gabagool had a great little walking video about that. It's just absolutely oozing it over all the volume that you put in. How many trades? Like if we were to calculate like our volume, I think all of us probably in volume, probably 7 figures for sure, right? And it's absolutely insane how much we've used OpenSea.
They should just give us all $1 million. Come on.
That's deserved, right?
Just give us equity in the company. It's funny how the day the news breaks, OpenSea has been down for most of the day.
Yeah. Well, it's not funny. Come on, it's so predictable. That's like every other day on OpenSea.
I feel bad making fun of OpenSea, right? Because like they were there really early, and they did. Like I don't think NFTs catch on without the ease in which you can trade and list them on there, right? Like for like the early times, it was a great product, but it just feels like it's just stayed the same since, right? I don't know if there's been many improvements that have made it easier. I find sometimes that just the UX always is kind of confusing, and every change they make doesn't help old users. I don't think it really helps new users. And then so it's an odd thing to watch a product that you like obviously spent a lot of time using and kind of was probably key and instrumental for developing NFT market, just kind of flounder. And then to go this direction seems very, very strange, but that's their choice, I guess.
You would have thought they would have tried to buy our forgiveness with constant OpenSea issues, but alas.
Well, I think, one issue I see with OpenSea is, I don't mean to overly criticize them. I mean, it's easy to criticize them. They're sort of the only target, and the space has exploded so much, and they've been around forever. But there's no stickiness to the site, right? Like if a new site came tomorrow and was way better, I would just immediately go there and I would never go back to OpenSea. Why would I? I have nothing there that's mine. Like
For sure.
my banner, like whatever, I can just import that same file into the other site.
It's very key because they have no capture of their users, right? Like they don't, think about comparing it to Coinbase, where they have,
Right.
a lot of people whose only connection to crypto is through them.
Right.
And they have Coinbase
uh,
wallet or just completely custodial. Coinbase is completely custodial. And so, like I don't really see OpenSea has no capture of their own users this way. So people could leave very easily because there's nothing, what's holding them there? Like
right. And they don't
the
have
gas
any
cost of
tools
delisting.
Sorry.
Yeah, the gas cost of delisting, right? It's too expensive to delist most of my garbage NFTs.
Oh man! Oh, but speaking of, have you seen that Genie tool? That thing's pretty sweet, actually. I was using it the other day, and you could batch. They claim that you save gas money, which I don't quite understand how you would save gas money, but you definitely easier to use. So you click on, for example, you could click like 10, groupies or 10 cryptodes or whatever, and then list them all for sale at the same price in one transaction. Or conversely, if you want to sweep the floor, I haven't tried that floor sweeping part, but you can basically buy like 10 things all at once,
Oh, wow.
and you just click sign after you get the first confirmation. So it's actually way easier than doing it on OpenSea.
Yeah, and like it's not just OpenSea that you can interact with, right? And so another marketplace could, in combination with people start using something like Genie, another marketplace could be open. That could be a direction where they get new eyeballs. Because right now, the only thing keeping OpenSea going is that just kind of default where people go look for things.
Right. But so this is a good example too. Like it's kind of ironic that on Genie, I was on there and I connected my wallet. If you go on there and you can browse your own collection of NFTs to list for sale or to select a trade, but just in that little window, it's actually a more pleasing experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Look at your NFTs that way than it is on OpenSea. So it's like, why is that? I don't see why OpenSea can't make it better if that's the case.
Yeah, I tried this out a few weeks ago, and I found it a real good experience, much more enjoyable than OpenSea. I test listed a thing on OpenSea through it, and then I test delisted. I tried the batch thing, but I didn't actually go through and sort of sweep the floor of a collection. But no, it was really a good experience. I was going to ask about this tweet that Owen made earlier, where he's talking about what he wants to do to expand SudoSwap. And I guess he wants to do, that's a similar tool that does similar stuff, I guess, in terms of you being able to set up trades, set up stuff from your collection and swap it for things for other collections. So I didn't know if you'd seen it, any of you, or if you had any sort of thoughts on it.
So a lot of people think that their NFTs live on OpenSea. People, I think, still are confused about where things exist on the blockchain. And like an interesting thing about like the SudoSwap, right, is if he has contracts to be able to list something for sale, then someone else can build a front end that directs traffic towards those contracts. I mean, Genie can just link to it, right? There's lots of ways in which other competition can because all you really need is a contract that allows you to take payment and sends the NFT, right? Like that's all the OpenSea contract really does, and that's what the Rarible contract does. And so,
how does the OpenSea shared storefront? How would that work on another site? Would it still be able to access it just the same? I mean, imagine it would, right?
I don't know. Can you sell them on Rarible? I think you can.
I don't know. Never tried.
I'm not sure. Actually,
Yeah.
I've never actually thought of that.
I would assume you could, but I don't know. I mean, if you couldn't, that would actually really suck. If you minted all your work on there and you couldn't do it anywhere else.
But that's, there you go. That's the importance of having your own contract, the composability of things. Like I've minted stuff and a lot of it's on OpenSea shared storefront because it was really cheap stuff. So, there's a cost to that for sure. I think, that's one of the issues of OpenSea, right? They have basically the contract that we don't know anything about. We don't really know.
Right. It's a big black box. Like I like to actually, I'm not technical, but I still like to dig into the contract sometimes and look where the metadata is stored and that kind of stuff. And you can't do that with the shared contract on OpenSea. It's all like, you can't really access it.
But I think, even beyond SudoSwap, you have Nifty and Foundation and Super Bear all opening up to kind of interact with more types of NFTs. Nifty's going, allowing me to have interact with your ETH wallets. It doesn't have to be on their platform.
Yeah, that's actually really great.
Yeah, it's going to be big. Because there's a lot of great NFTs on Nifty. Like people give that platform a hard time, but like a lot of important stuff is on there, right? And then Foundation, they still continue to grow, and we still have and then Super Rare is opening up the storefronts. These concepts.
I've had a change of heart on Nifty Gateway. I didn't really like it at first, and I happen to have a Gemini account, and so you can actually link it to Gemini. And if you have a dollar balance in there, you can just use that to buy stuff. And if you sell an NFT, you can just push a button to get it over to your account. So that part's kind of cool, but I didn't really like how centralized it was, and the fact that now they're allowing you to interact with it with your own wallet without having to transfer back and forth. That's key. I'm really glad they're doing that because the UI is good and the quality of the art is really good. I have some pieces on Nifty Gateway, and I used to look at the fact that they were on that contract as a negative, but now I'm actually more stoked about it. What about some of these I was looking at my collection yesterday, and one of my favorite pieces is a Coldy piece, and it's like a 25-second video clip with audio. And those are a bit tricky, right? I mean, a lot of times when you want to watch them, like you can't watch them on your phone usually, and even on the actual site, you can't really watch them half the time. They don't really work, or they're glitchy, they're buffering or whatever. Like I wonder what the solution is going to be to that. And then when we get into even more complicated NFTs, like movie scenes and stuff like that.
I was reading an interesting article today about why before NFTs, digital art didn't take off, right? But at the same time, there's still a huge market for kind of performance art or installations, things that you can't actually buy or move and put anywhere, right? Like they just live in galleries. Important pieces, like maybe you don't have to always be able to interact with them directly all the time. I think right now we're in this world where we should always be able to experience it all the time. But I think, as kind of the market matures, there's still going to be important pieces that you don't necessarily have to see. They can live in textbooks. They can live in our history books. And so owning them will be important too.
Yeah, one vision I have of the future is everyone has a standardized display. It can be made by different companies, but they have certain standards they follow. And it'll show, you can have it do like a Spotify of art, right? Where it'll just use its algorithm to show art that you might like. And then let's say it shows a Fidenza, let's say it shows a Fidenza. And I'm like, oh, that's and I don't even know what a Fidenza is, and then I could look at it and it could tell me, and then I could go to the site where it lives, and then I could see who owns it, and I could go see their collection, and you could do all that on the display. That would be pretty cool. And it'd be kind of cool on the other side, knowing that you own these NFTs and you know that they're in this network, and everyone all over the world could be looking at them in their house, or you could even like star it or something. You can see how many people have viewed it in the last, week or whatever.
That's quite interesting. I think that's the key advantage NFTs have over almost any other form of art. Like, I don't necessarily think digital art is going to replace physical art in any real sense because they're just different mediums. But the ability to share the size of market that you can engage and the ability for things to go viral. Like, we still worry about things only having a few thousand editions, but then, 100,000 people are interested in something. There's 10 million eyeballs and only 1% care about that one thing. You're still looking at huge amounts of people interested in one thing, right? So
yeah, 4156 always said, right, that his NFTs, I think, and more specifically his punks, were a form of social currency, and that was something I always thought was true, especially about with his ape and his X copy collection particularly.
When I was in New York, I noticed that I didn't really want to out myself too much, but I had a shirt with my punk on it, and then I didn't actually want to wear it because I was kind of embarrassed. So I just did it. It was cold enough where I wore a jacket. But if I was at a party and people were like, oh, what do you do? Or how long have you been doing this? Or, and you kind of get to know them a little bit. And then if I just showed them that picture, they'd be like, oh, either they recognize it from Twitter or they knew that means you've been doing this for a while, or you're not just some dipshit, right? You actually know what you're talking about. Which doesn't automatically mean that, but in general it does, and you kind of get that social currency.
That's interesting. Yeah, I wish I had a lot more things for exactly that reason.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too when kind of explaining NFTs to people who are a little bit more hesitant to accept the concept and like maybe more traditional art collectors or traditional whatever baseball card collectors or what have you. Your audience is very capped, right? With a physical collectible, like you can have so many people at your house or wherever it may be, or so many people that can see your display at a museum. Whereas your 4156, how many people have seen this guy's profile picture or have come across his whatever his Larva Labs page. You have your flex appeal to the entire internet.
Yeah, it's the key advantage. I think you're right. I think this year's kind of shown that these things do attract people, and it is interesting. Do we have any predictions about what 2022 is going to bring?
Man, that's a tough one. More PFPs, lots more PFPs.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Do you guys see a lot of more projects launching on ETH mainnet with like the gas fees being kind of restrictive?
I mean, I was kind of joking the other day that the only thing worse than paying these high gas fees is using layer 2 because it's so cumbersome. I mean, Matic, I've used Matic and I've used Collective with the X copies and stuff, the cards.
I don't know what network.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Anyway, it sucked. It's still a pain in the ass. One of mine's been stuck for months.
I've been using Arbitrum a bunch for the Treasure and Magic NFT thing, the game.
Yeah, it's a big alpha leak for sure.
Yeah,
Treasure and Magic on Arbitrum.
The bridging experience a couple of months ago versus now, it's definitely getting better. There are more options and it's getting easier. What I was going to ask is, we said when we briefly touched on crypto topics, it's layer 2 season. Is it ZK season? But do you think it's potentially layer 2 season for NFTs as well? Is that what's going to happen?
I mean, it's hard to say, but I would say like for some of my friends and whatnot, that got into NFTs a little bit later and are kind of like, stuck holding whatever, some bags and this and that, even if we believe in the projects, good projects, so they could be, obviously wrecked like punks even from peak, right? But like, so yeah, something I've been suggesting to people in the meantime is to familiarize themselves with these opportunities on layer 2, like you said, like the ZK and then Arbitrum and Optimism, because those will be ideally some areas to make up some of that to pad those NFT funds.
Yeah,
Get yourself something nice.
Exactly. Like, I think thinking even just away from NFTs for a second, in the last few days, I've moved stables around and I've done a bunch of stuff, and I've deliberately avoided Ethereum mainnet as much as I physically could. Like, I had stables to park, I parked them on AVAX. Like, I don't want to touch Ethereum if I don't have to.
It's like difficult for a new participant or anyone even to speculate when your cost of speculation is like whatever. I mean, $200 just to transact, like beyond the cost of the NFT itself. So it definitely adds up and can chop you up pretty quickly. So
I think though, if you look at how NFTs have fared though on some of the other L1s, you've seen some difficulties too with a lot of the stuff on Solana Art or the other digitalized. Like you see, like there's not a lot of volume happening, and
yeah, for sure. I mean,
with that too. I think there's a level where because NFTs are a cultural product, right? Like one thing is moving out of stables. Maybe you're worried about security. That's the only thing. And so if you don't worry about Apex or Avalanche, or if you're not worried about and some L2 security, maybe that is a great place to put your do all your DeFi and partner stables and stuff like that. But for NFTs, I feel like there is some level of cultural capital that's kind of tied up in it. And I think you're right. To speculate on something very cheap, you can go somewhere else, and maybe we're seeing some of the game token stuff, like some of us are playing with the DeFi kingdoms, or Avagochi, or those things can't really exist on layer 1. And
right.
I've seen lots of growth in terms of the NFTs associated with it, but they're not at all the same as, say, like I wouldn't even if you compare Tezos NFTs to ETH ones, right? There's a clear premium in terms of the same NFT could be launched on Ethereum and it will command a much higher value. There's just, I think, deeper pockets on Ethereum. For me, I think 2022 is going to be like the year, not where we always say the institutions are coming or the funds are coming or these sorts of things. But I do think we're going to start seeing kind of serious crypto companies start to develop their own collections and start to act more like traditional banks do in the real world. And so there's one way to some of these these protocols and these things have put money towards charities and stuff like that. And I think that's, there's some value in that too as well. But I think we're also going to start seeing like supporting of the arts and supporting of other sorts of crypto initiatives. And I still think NFTs are a long ways away before any sort of real world adoption where people with serious money want to come in.
Like another something to look forward to possibly is the concept of using NFTs as a collateral, like a DeFi collateral.
Right. Yeah.
I think that could obviously provide a serious boost in interest if you don't have to worry about the liquidity aspects of your profile picture.
What was that automated market maker we saw with NFTs? I didn't understand how that would work.
SudoSwap is putting together their own AMM as well.
So how would that work? I mean, if you have, I know
I'm not entirely sure how liquidations and the collateral pricing would work.
But if there was some sort of improvement in the liquidity like that, that could cause a huge explosion. It could have the opposite effect of making prices get lower initially, because if you could liquidate, maybe you would be a bit of a race to the bottom. But then I think long term, that liquidity would be massive.
Yeah, so much of the market in NFTs is liquidity premium, right? And so you can see when things dry up, the prices crash because like people are buying with the expectation of being able to resell.
And this fixation on floor price is ridiculous, right? Like, you look at a floor price and then you look at the volume and there hasn't been a sale in 8 days. It's like, well, that doesn't mean, obviously that's way too high. I don't think people, even though they might intellectually understand it, they don't really grasp that you have to look at the floor price with volume. Like if there's no volume, the floor price is completely meaningless, which seems obvious, but even I fall for it, right? Like I'll click on the floor price of a project and without digging in deeper, kind of assume that's about where it's worth. But a lot of times it's not.
It's a really interesting dynamic with this particular NFT run, right? Because there was the, kind of like the OGs like yourself that were interested, in years prior. And then there was the kind of people like probably more along my lines that were, introduced to Top Shots and then kind of, branched out from there into whatever profile pictures and Nifty and so on. And then, then there's the speculators, right, that see these like ballooning prices, and then people that are in there. So then, you have this interesting dynamic between collectors and then flippers, So yeah, the liquidity issue and floor prices is definitely interesting.
Do you think next year will be more about a different layer 1 or a layer 2 solution?
Layer 2. I think there's too much stickiness to Ethereum.
I think the more layer 2s can make it feel like you're extending layer 1, Ethereum layer 1, the better. And I think Zink's right that for 1.1 NFT art and for stuff that commands a real high value, I think you're going to still want to store that stuff and transact with that stuff on layer 1 Ethereum. But just in general, a lot of OpenSea volume and a lot of marketplace volume, it just logically needs to live on layer 2, right? It seems silly. It must, for things to evolve, I think, and for the user base to grow, because for reasons we've just discussed.
That makes me really bullish, actually, because we're sort of stuck right now, and we're using these things that aren't ready yet. Like, another example is Palm, right, for the Damien Hirst. And so my Damien Hirst is stuck on Palm, and I couldn't figure out how to get it off. And like the guy DMs you like 48 lines of instructions of how to do it and says, be careful. It might take 3 days. And don't worry if it seems like it's lost. Eventually it'll show up. It sounds like, screw it, I'm not even going to deal. But my point is, that will get fixed, right? It has to get fixed. Exactly. 100% confident it'll get fixed. And when it does, we're just impatient. When it does, it'll make things so much better. And if we're already using it to this degree now, just imagine how many more people will come in at that point.
I was listening to Nate Alex talk about some stuff back when he first got in, and Etherscan didn't even work, right? It could go down or not even, you know what I mean? Like you couldn't even, there wasn't even interacting with content. Like if the front end of the website went down, which was common because it's like, early days, then you couldn't even use Etherscan to like interact with the contract thing. Now you have so much more. There's so much easier to like, even if you have some technical know-how for things to work, and it's then so of course like everything's going to get better, right? It constantly has been getting better.
I used Synapse today or yesterday, moved some funds to Polygon, and it says in the docs it's going to take 2 to 3 minutes, and like an hour later, substantial funds still haven't shown up. So I didn't know what to do. I went onto Telegram and I literally messaged a rep from Synapse and had a conversation with a real human and had a joke with him. Like that. It just feels weird that like this thing that's transferring lots and lots of value every day right now is still, I can reach out to a guy on Telegram and get help immediately. Like
can you imagine?
Yeah.
Mid-wire. I just know so many people have had experiences where they've tried to wire large amounts of money, especially internationally. And you're like, the person puts it through the wrong system, right. Especially if it's between Europe and the US, maybe puts it through the wrong system. And just like, how do you get into contact with anyone to fix it? There's nobody at the bank that really wants to talk to you.
Yeah, maybe in a lot of ways it's fortunate that we're still this early, that I can just reach out to a dude on Telegram and get some help. But yeah, I think you're right, Scaly, that like the fact that we're all committed and using this stuff all the time when it's such a pain in the ass, and there's still so much work to be done, that you've got to be bullish about the future.
Well, that's the biggest thing for me is with all the announcements, I'm not so worried about Facebook or these other companies dominating the metaverse. Like, I think, this stuff is all much bigger than them, but it does signal to people who are young, maybe who just coming in, like getting out of college or just graduate, or maybe even in college already, that this is an area to actually work. And I think we're going to see the next 3 or 5 years, this big influx of even more talent coming into the space. Like,
if I had a kid if I had a senior in high school right now or in college, I would say go into blockchain, figure out a way to do that.
I mean, it's totally inevitable, right? Like, I mean, if you have nieces, nephews, young kids, like they're just on Roblox and Minecraft and whatever, their pseudo metaverse of choices, and they're just trading digital items back and forth, right? And we're just grown up kids doing the same thing but just speculating with ETH value attached to those items, right? So, I mean, I think it's just, yeah, it's interesting. Like CL was talking about this on with Cred and Don Alt. Like, it was an older episode. It was during the first like NFT sort of bear, right? Where they were like, was this NFT run up and like interest and the coin run up in addition? Like, was that a product of COVID, or because we're all stuck at home and staring at our screens and we have nothing else to do but just speculate on anything, right? There's not even any sports going on for much of that time. And and his answer I thought was particularly like accurate, like that it was more of a catalyst for like the inevitable rather than like a cause of COVID. And like I thought his like every point he said about how we spend more and more time on our screens, and you see this more and more like with the younger generation. Yeah, so yeah, for sure, I think NFTs are inevitable. Just we're still in probably some early stages, as cliche as that may be to say.
I just had a funny memory of, it must have been a year ago, probably right around a year ago. It was right when the Beeple's first launch came out. And I think that's the one Deb actually won. Politics is bullshit. And that was kind of the first thing that got NFTs kind of mainstream attention, if you guys remember. And, I had been doing this for a long time, and I was on Twitter rarely, only more for coins and stuff. And I was in these Discord groups for NFT stuff. And all of a sudden one day I went on Twitter. I didn't even go on it every day. And I go on Twitter and my timeline was full of all this NFT, anger and like Peter McCormick talking about how fucking stupid NFTs are and all this vitriol against NFTs. And I'm thinking, you guys don't even know what these are a week ago. Like, what the hell? Where's this all coming from? And I hadn't even heard of Beeple. Honestly, I wasn't following it that closely then. And then, and I actually got scared, kind of like, what the hell? Like, why? Is this whole right click save thing true? Like, is everyone going to just hate these things and these are all just garbage? And looking back on it, obviously that's laughable. That was like the very first sign that these were going to go gigantic, right? And I don't know, it's sort of a non sequitur, but it just kind of, you guys talking about all that made me think of it. It's pretty funny how you get this wave of negative energy first, and that's sort of like the first sign that shit's about to explode and go crazy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the funny things, right? Like how much resistance towards NFTs you see from people who are very much pro crypto, right? And how they want like almost unwilling to like open their minds and embrace the concept of NFTs when they're like, right? Like just it's just so funny. I mean,
yeah, and that was sort of the birth of NFT Twitter, because before that, at least for me personally, if I went on there and talked about NFTs, I got like one like, and I mean, I didn't have any followers back then. Like nobody cared. And I was just on it to like get information. But my only tweets would be about NFTs. Maybe one person would see it. And then, and then all of a sudden, all these guys that I was following are talking about NFTs. They're talking about them negatively, but they're talking about them. It was pretty funny.
I think it's just hard to get things right twice. And so, someone was early with Bitcoin or some other thing, and then they see their thing not doing particularly well, or maybe doing okay, and they see something else, blow up. It's easy to fade.
You mean like, for example, for example, just throwing it out there, if someone bought CryptoPunks and then didn't have an ape, and they got real salty about apes. So you mean like maybe like that?
Yeah, I think there's a few cases out there.
Yeah. I don't think it was like 100% salt from crypto people early days. Like I remember kitties and punks, and I just thought I didn't get it. And I remember rare pepes, and it didn't make sense to me why you'd want to own digital assets of that type. Like I was totally bought into Bitcoin. I was totally bought into crypto as a concept, but yeah, something didn't click until this year for me. And that's someone who is like super activated crypto wise. Like I was a true believer, if you like, back then. And even for me,
that's pretty funny.
It took like a while, some repeat exposure and maybe some validation from the broader market. And whether that's a good trait of mine or not, maybe I needed that Lindy or reflexivity or whatever the buzz term you want to attach to it. Maybe I needed to see that feedback loop of other people recognizing the medium or the format.
Do you remember what it was that turned you on NFT?
I was just going to ask that.
Got it?
What was the moment? What was the NFT that made you come over to the dark side?
You know what? I think it was Top Shot as well this year. And I missed the first wave. Like I wasn't paying attention at all. Even the Beeple stuff, I kind of, it was on the periphery, but I hadn't really paid too much attention. And then when Top Shot blew up was it February time when you guys got super wealthy? If you were in Top Shot, and that I was like, shit, like the penny dropped, and then I was all in, and I was researching heavily and looking at the trash art stuff. Like I got deep pretty quick because I just wanted to know more about it, and it suddenly dawned on me that there was huge opportunity in all of this stuff that everyone was going to have forgotten about. And
those were the days, right? The pack drop queues.
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah. And I never got lucky. I came in too late to get lucky. By the time I got in, it was literally the 300-400K for people queuing for however many packs, like 20K packs or 50K packs, or whatever it was. So,
the stealth drop pack lotteries used to be the best, but like the rabid discords of people just going absolutely ape shit.
Oh my God, remember that? Yeah, that was crazy.
But I think
February was nuts.
Yeah. I think Top Shot's a good gateway for a lot of people because you can relate to it so much more. I guess it reflects something that we're used to in the real world, tangible collectibles, and it suddenly hit me that if this stuff is going to be important, if people really are going to care about NFTs in 5 or 10 years, then they're definitely going to care about the first baseball cards. They're definitely going to care about the first this or the penny dropped, and I just started to look into it. But Scaly, was it Top Shot for you? Like, what was the first thing?
Actually, well, I was going to ask you, when did you get into crypto in general? How long have you been into it?
I've been in way longer than I should be for the amount of money I've managed to accumulate over the years. I've dipped in and out of it. Like my first transactions were like 2011, but I didn't buy and sell. I didn't buy and sell stuff on the dark net, but I traded goods with people that I didn't want to reveal identity to, and this proof of concept had just been happening with this Silk Road thing, and I was like, okay, we can use this. So I transacted a bit. I actually sold a piece of art, weirdly enough, but just a completely different type of art. And at the time, it was like say $300 worth, and it was 28 point something Bitcoin. But I just immediately cashed that out because I was selling something I needed to sell because I needed some money. That came and went. And then I started mining alts sort of 2013-ish. So that was when I really got interested and got deep around that time.
That's so interesting. And like you were saying, Zink. So you're story is so different than mine. I got in 2018, and within a week I was buying an NFT. Like in my mind, the only thing that did make sense was NFTs.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, like very different. And yeah, my friend who told me about Bitcoin is like you. He's been in it forever, and he still doesn't own an NFT. And I've been trying to explain it to him, and he's like, I don't understand it.
So what did you guys think about? What did you think about crypto and Bitcoin then up to that point? What were your thoughts on crypto as money?
So I have a good story. Someone probably was 2013, 2012. Someone Facebook messaged me that I used to, I was in the military in the past, so we sailed together, and he was asking me about Bitcoin, and I was in grad school for economics, and so I was his only real contact for anyone that would have like any sort of economy knowledge. And I told him, yeah, it's an interesting idea, but it's probably not going to go anywhere, kind of thing. Like a little blurred back at him, and I'm just hoping that he can listen to me. So I knew about it way back then, but I didn't think it was that. I didn't think it was that there was something there. I didn't really quite understand it, to be honest.
Yeah,
and so I remember reading my blinders up.
I remember reading the New York Times in 2017 when Bitcoin was. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember, it was like a famous cover shot of these two guys wearing Bitcoin sweaters.
Everyone's getting fabulously rich and you're not, or whatever it is.
Yep, exactly. And I remember reading that article, and that was only a few months before I ended up getting into it, and thinking at the time, like, I'm too old to understand this stuff. Like, this is for like 18-year-olds. I can't even grasp. Like, the article didn't explain really what it is, right? And I didn't understand it at all. I'm like, I'll never understand this. Like, it seems interesting, but I don't get it. Like, I don't even know where to start. And then all it took was a friend explaining it to me over like 10 minutes. And then I knew enough to like learn more. And then I completely went all in. I was like fascinated by the whole concept.
I wish I knew you in 2019. I minted some block cities. I thought it was a lot of fun. Didn't do any extra research. Didn't look into anything else, what the NFT space is. Just ignored it for a few, I got like 5 or 6 of them. And then, I think like April 2019 would have been prime time to start accumulating some punks for not a bad price.
That's what all these PFP projects are trying to capture, right? Is going back in time and minting punks. I mean, honestly, it's like all the altcoins were for Bitcoin. Like all these guys who bought Bitcoin for $20 and then they're rich and then they come out with Ripple and you're like, oh, that's the next Bitcoin. I'm going to buy that for 5 cents and it's going to go up. And then it just, that you can't go back in time.
The last one of those ones was probably Cool Cats.
What about Kongs? When did Kongs come out?
Kongs before.
Okay.
I mean, so Kongs was like in the spring. It was, and they were 0.001 or something. Yeah, they were very cheap.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Cool Cats are 0.02. They actually were below mint for some time. They were 2 weeks minted about when and no one really knew anything about them. And then I remember like seeing like Alex Goss or a few other people kind of tweet about them. And they're like, oh, they look really nice. And so grabbed a bunch, and it was like that kind of gold rush. Like,
how many did you get back then?
Like 8 or something. I'm not sure. Not a ton. Yeah. I had like enough. And I flipped a few of them, and I kept a few of them. But
I forgot they were only 0.02. That's crazy.
Yeah, even then, the people look back, right, and they like. I think it's also funny when people look back and like when things are so cheap relative to what they are now. Like, oh man, I wish I went back and bought 100 of them. And only a few people really are capable of pulling the trigger on.
Yeah, Prank Z and Coco Bear, and
it's always revisionist history, right? Like, you also end up with a wallet full of Chads, right? Like we have those too. It doesn't always work out.
I never bought Chads. Hey, for the record, I never bought any Chads.
Come on, you never bought any Chads? You didn't go down with
no, I told you guys I told you guys they were stupid. I'm not buying them.
I probably bought as many Chads as I did Cool Cats.
Buy some Chads.
Metabots. I bought as many Metabots as I bought Cool Cats for the same prices too.
Yeah, definitely. I have some Metabots. I have some Chads. Right, like if I just bought Cool Cats with that money that I'd spend on Chads and Metabots, it would be like a 60, 70 swing, right? Like it's obscene to think about. Like, these decisions and how they just haunt you. It's so it's sick.
But we also do that we take the bottom price and the top price, and that's not reality, right? Like, let's say you did buy 10 Cool Cats, you would have sold some at 0.5, some at 1, some at 2. It's not like you would have waited and held them until they're 8 ETH,
For sure,
I mean,
for sure. The market
almost no one
psychology
would.
aspects.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I did. I got in, when Zinc got in and sold them at about 1 ETH and then rebought in when it was around 8.
Yeah. Yeah. I only bought one. Actually, I bought 2 Cool Cats, and I bought them when they were expensive. Not that much, but I bought one for 1 and sold it at 3, and then I bought a Bob Ross at 5.5, and I still have that one.
From a somewhat outsider's perspective, in as much as when Profile Pick Mania was really kicking off, I wasn't bankrolled to fire loads of bullets at Profile Picks, and B, I just wasn't in the right mindset at that time. But I watched you guys, and you shouldn't beat yourselves up too much about the decisions you did make or didn't make, or the tops you did sell or didn't sell, because I watched you guys attack that season with a force, and I think the approach you guys seemed to take was spot on, that you fired at everything that looked half decent, and the hits came and some of them didn't, and that's why you've got a wallet of Chads and a wallet of this and that. So I think you hit it in the right way that period of time.
Yeah, that's a good point. As a group we fucking killed it, to be honest.
Yeah,
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just natural selection of wallets, right? Like you're not going to end up with a bunch of stuff that's worth a lot. The only stuff you're going to end up keeping is the stuff that you can't get rid of, right? It's like the flippers game, the flippers curse, maybe.
Speaking of, I'm gonna bundle all of my crap, and I'm gonna sell it to one of you guys for like 0.5 ETH, and then you guys can do the same to me, and then we can harvest all those losses, right?
We're gonna cut this part out.
Yeah.
There's nothing illegal about that. I think that's totally legal. Not tax advice. Not an advisor.
That was Scaly Nelson that just spoke.
Yeah, I think the real takeaway from this that little mini segment was to find a group of people that you can share alpha with and research projects with together, because it's, especially during the profile picture mania, it was a nonstop 24 hours, 7 days a week, full-time job, and it was it's obviously still now it's impossible to get to every single project, every single coin, so it's great to have to met a group of friends that you can trust and, bounce ideas off of, obviously.
So true.
And harvest tax losses with.
Exactly.
I think that's a great place to end, right? So
Yeah.
That was a good. Thanks for everyone for joining this little discussion.
It's been fun.
All right.
Yeah, for sure. Nice talking to you guys.
Rare. All right. We'll talk next week.